Here.
I'll have that. That's for sure.
So today we're going to talk about focus, feel, timing, and balance in horsemanship. And both of us will share what that means to us individually and how we teach it to our clients. It's a subject that I've been paying a lot of attention to myself lately. And because of that, it's also showing up more in the clinics I'm teaching and the lessons I'm teaching. So I list them in a specific order for a reason. Focus. Focus can mean a lot of things, but for me, focus is first and foremost being in the present moment with your horse and not allowing outer things to distract you, like what you're going to do when you get done, what happened before you got there, what your horse did the day before or the week before. It's focusing on right in this present moment. The other thing about focus is I am doing this less and less, but I do it, and I see my clients doing it all the time. When we're riding, or even when we're working on the ground, we tend to look at the horse, and that's not our job. Our horses are solid underneath us most of the time, and our job is to be focused on where we're going and what we're doing. When we focus on our horses, what happens when you look down, if you just do it right now as you're listening to this video and you look down, you can feel the weight go down in your seat and more so forward in your pelvis. So as you're doing that, if a horse can feel a fly in the middle of their back, and when you look down at your horse all the time, you're dropping your weight on the front end of them. And then they just slow down. So it's so fun to catch yourself doing that, or when I'm teaching, convince my clients to look off into the distance of where they're riding and focus on something. You will see that horse just pick up their pace, which is really cool. It's our job to stay focused on where we're at, where we're going. It's the horse's job to stay focused on his footfall and his ears. Now, another thing that comes in with the topic of focus that I've really been playing a lot with in my own work and with my clients is one of the tricks to becoming a good horseman is to begin to think like a horse and act like a horse. And you can take that to the depths in which you're ready or you want, but horses see binocular. Okay, so they're seeing around. Well, we see straight on, but we also have the gift of seeing peripheral vision. And what I'm really focusing on myself, and again teaching my students, is start to see your surroundings through your peripheral vision. So you're going to begin to see more of what the horse is seeing. And if you pay attention, like even when you're just sitting watching TV or doing chores, I don't care what you're doing, but if you just pay attention, like I can see Kristen right now. I'm looking at Kristen, but I can also see all the contents on my desk. I can see the walls to my left and the walls to my right. I can see, well, because I have my computer, I can see behind me. That's cheating. Horses can't see behind them either. But my point being is we don't have to look at our horse because we can see them through our peripheral vision. So the power of focus, the more that you can play with that and own it, the better it's going to be and the more your horse is going to flow with you. Do you want to add anything to that, Kristen, before we go into feel?
Yeah, so one of the things, well, so it's kind of leads into feel, especially with looking down, right? Is that you kind of want to think of it as a blind person, right? A blind person has to make all of their other senses better, right? Because they can't see. So what I find is that when people are staring down at their horse, they lose their feel. They lose their ability to connect with their horse, right? Because we naturally are such visual people that we go to that point of just relying on our eyesight, because that's what we do all day long. We get away from that heart-to-heart connection when we're staring at them. And, you know, if you guys have ever been around somebody that has lost their eyesight, it is amazing how much better those other senses get, right? So your sense of awareness increases, right? Your sense of feeling for your horse. Is my horse tense? Is he agitated? Is he happy? Is he sad? What is he, right? If you stare at him all the time, that will go away. And that's not something you want to have go away, right? That's something you want to nurture. And so that's where you have to, one of the things that happens, and one of the reasons why your horse speeds up and goes in the direction you want him to go when you're looking there, is that's where you're focusing your intention, right? Your intention is propelling your body's own energy in that direction. Another thing that happens when you're looking down is your heart center closes, right? You do this and your heart center and your chakras all in this area close, they shut down. So that's where that heart-to-heart connection comes in, right? So you want to be up here looking at the panorama, being aware. And to me, the focus becomes internal, right? Yes, you're aware of everything outside, but the focus becomes internal. That's where the saying of tunnel focus comes in, right? Where you don't see or hear a whole bunch of what's going on around you because you are so in tune with this. Yes, you're aware of your surroundings, like she said, enough with your peripheral vision, that type of thing, so you don't get into danger, right? But you need to have that level of focus to have that level of feel. So sorry, I know we go into the next spot with that, but no, that's my, you know, my feeling with that. And a lot of people don't think about your heart chakras and everything that you're shutting down when you stare at the ground. Think about how much your perspective changes when you remember to look up and look at the scenery. What does that do for you emotionally, right? I mean, I do that here. I'll be walking, staring at the ground for gosh knows whatever reason when I have these amazing mountains to look at, and my life force comes up, right? My eyes know where my feet are, right? I don't have to stare at my feet to walk. That's just nature, right? And so often we stare at our horse to make sure that they're doing the maneuvers because we aren't good enough to feel what they're doing. So, I mean, not to put ourselves down, but that's the truth, right? We're trying to use it as a backup. If we really knew what it actually felt like, let's say for us to get a horse on the bit, to horse to get impulsion, we wouldn't have to look at it to believe it. So.
And leading into that, the more that you can learn to feel your horse, the less you need to look down.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hear of getting in the zone, you know, when you're working out, when you're running, when you're dancing, all of us that are working and striving towards perfecting something, we find the zone, and the zone is what keeps us going. And when you can get into feel with your horse, you won't need to look down. And through seeing your peripheral vision, you'll see the ears, you'll see the movement of his head, but more importantly, you will feel You will develop the feel like they feel. They can feel a fly on their back. When you focus on learning, focus, no pun, when you're striving to master focus, feel, timing, and balance, you will feel through your reins and feel through your legs and your seat. Your horse's every move. And as you get deeper into this exploration of these four things, you will actually be able to begin to feel their mind and their emotions. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to feel every breath they take, as well as you'll begin to feel yourself better. Because horses are rhythmic animals and they thrive on rhythm. And I tell my students all the time, to me, horsemanship is like ballroom dancers. You guys will hear me say this. The more you listen to Kristen and I, the more you're going to hear me go back to that, because you watch those ballroom dancers, those ones that have been at it for a long time and they've devoted themselves to mastering that partnership. You begin to feel your partner. Every breath, every emotion that comes up, you can get to that level with your horse. Am I there? No. And honestly, it's probably going to be my lifelong journey to master these four things. But the feel is to feel your horse, feel yourself, feel the connection of the two of you. And that's on the ground, not just in the saddle. I've been really playing with the idea of my horse is a beach ball and I am the water. And how can I influence that beach ball through my rhythmic motion, through my feeling him underneath me, and how would I glide him and guide him? So to me, that, the feel is something that takes time to master, and it's one of those senses, right, Kristen? When we stop using our eyes so much,
yeah,
we strengthen the feel. And horses, they're masters. They're masters at feel. What would you like to add to that, Kristen?
So one of the things I wanted to share about feel and connecting with your horses emotionally is that I think I use it a lot in my teaching to help people overcome fear. And because so often we react to something or we think something's going to be a problem. And if we're disconnected to our horse, we don't recognize that it's actually not a problem for the horse. And if we go into our rational brain and we realize, well, the horse is centered and grounded and I can feel that, well, then the odds of something happening are really low, because we get away from that, right? And I know it's easier said than done, but so often for me, when I'm teaching, I'll say, okay, so the person's blood pressure comes up, they start rising, and then I realize at that point that they have been disconnected from the feel from their horse, right? And I'll say, well, what is your horse telling you? What does your horse feel like? And so much of the time the person will say, well, they're relaxed or they feel calm. I'll say, well, if the horse feels calm, what are the odds of something happening to you? So often we think about giving our horse strength by connecting with them from feel, but remember, they can also do the same, right? Not that it's not their responsibility, but we soothe each other, right? That's what a team is, and I'm not saying you come and you dump on your horse every day and you have no responsibility for that. I'm not saying that, but remember, this is a partnership. It's a give and a take. So think about it from both directions, right? You get to feel him and he gets to feel you, right? So sometimes we're going to have a feeling, you know, of, okay, I have to help ground him, right? So I'm going to come in, be relaxed, and help my horse. Sometimes my horse is going to step in and help me. So that's, you know, and there's also an awareness that comes from feel as well, where you can, if you know how your horse moves, for example. So often I've had here on a mechanical level where I'll have vets come in because they know that I can feel things before it's a big problem, right? My horse will just have a little bit of maybe just not as much fluidity through his body on one side than the other. So sometimes I'll come in and say, well, you know, Silver was a good example, okay? I was saying for quite a while, and you know, our vet here, Dr. Purcell, is really good, and she trusts me, saying, you know, there's just not something right. He doesn't feel like he's pushing evenly from behind on both legs. Well, we go through the lameness exam. He looks great, right? You ride him, he looked great. This was several years ago. And so she says, okay, let's just pop an ultrasound on. Well, the bugger was so tough, right, that he wouldn't show any lameness, but it was there. And when you really become connected to how every part of them feels, remember there's an emotional part of feeling as well as a physical part. You can become their advocate big time, right? So like in his case with that suspensory, it went from being what could have been a full tear to a sprain, right? You know, because as we know, our partners, most of them are going to not show any weakness for as long as they can show it, right? So it's up to us to not only connect with them spiritually, but connect with them physically, right? So one of the exercises that I do with a lot of my students is I have them close their eyes and they actually tell me when each foot is falling. I want them to be able to feel when each foot is falling and to be able to manipulate and that control that and tell me, when do I think it's hitting harder? When do I think it's hitting softer? Right? So that they can train their mind body awareness. So that's a, you know, really good exercise. And you can do that on the ground. I imagine too, you can use your hearing for that as well too, right? Mm-hmm. Close your eyes and listen. Listen for the footfalls. You know, ask yourself, when is my horse, you know, leading off? Do they sound different going to the left than they do to the right? Right? What are you getting from them? What are you getting from them when they go into the trot versus the canter? And like I said, for this guy, especially hind legs are hard, right? They're kind of a harder lameness to discover. It was just, if you looked at it on the lunge, it just looked like, after we diagnosed it, that he didn't want to weight his heel as much as the other side. And so that's something I want you to ask yourself when you're riding. Can you actually feel each foot pushing off the ground? It's really cool when you can, right? You know, and you go, oh gosh. And then you start to play with yourself and your own energy and feel, can you manipulate that, right? Mm-hmm. Can you encourage that? So that's a pretty cool thing for a lot of people. And then you can feel muscle tension, right? Because, you know, depending on when a horse goes into that fear mode, right, that muscle tension increases. I have a black horse here, Wincento. I always called him poker face. Everybody be like, he's calm, cool, collected, and you'd sit on him and he was like, right? But he didn't look like it on the outside. But when you sat on his back, you're like, oh man, these muscles are tight. He's ready to boogie. So, you know, that's something, right, to ask yourself, what is my horse's precursor, right? You know, is it breathing, right? Can I feel my horse getting faster in their breathing? Can I feel the relaxed muscles? Can I feel the tense muscles? So there's just there's a huge component to that. So sorry.
One of the things that for those of you who this is a new concept and you haven't ever really played with it, or you've been kind of wanting to play with it, but you didn't really know where to start. One of the ways that you can begin to, like she was saying, hear the footfall, is when you're on the ground with them and you're in an area that, like a round pen, you can close your eyes and listen to the striking on the ground. You know, find, is there a rhythm? Is there a cadence? Is it going faster? Does it slow down? You can play with that. You can close your eyes for, you know, just a few minutes and then open them, or 30 seconds and open them. The other thing that you can play with is when you're riding them and they raise their head high in alert or anxiety or whatever is putting them in that higher head state, can you feel their back muscles shifting? Can you feel the muscles in their shoulder? And when they lower their head, can you feel what that feels like? You know, because like we are saying all the time, it's a partnership. And if we want them to get really good at understanding us and working with us, it's important that we do the same thing for them. And Kristen had mentioned, you know, when you start to really feel those feet striking off the ground and can count those 4 strides or this trot or whatever gait you're in, that's, you know, the faster they're going, the harder it is. That really takes a lot of feel. The more that you try to hear it, you're going to take away from your feel. But once you can really get into rhythm with feeling your horse and you have the power of your focus going on, then when you bring in timing, all kinds of cool stuff starts to happen. Mm-hmm. You know, when we start riding a horse, we're riding the horse. And we're trying to stay on. We're trying to figure out balance. We're trying to see how do we sit a trot, you know? How do I sit a trot and steer at the same time, you know? So there's a lot going on. But the more that you begin to feel those things, the more comfortable you begin, and then you're ready to expand out farther. So the timing is really the next component to the partnership. Mm-hmm. When do you ask them to go to a more extended trot? And when do you relax and hold that rhythm with them to keep them from going into a trot? So we're saying we want an extended walk. Mm-hmm. And we ask for that extended walk. When do we ask for it? And when do we stop asking and hold that rhythm with them instead of getting that trot? When we want to put them on the circle. Horses, again, are rhythmic animals. They work in a cadence. You know, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, or a 1, 2, 1, 2. Sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, depending on what you're doing. The more that you can find that timing, and the more that you can master using your seat and your feet and your hands at that right moment of the timing, is when you can get things really moving smoothly, like that ballroom dancing, gliding across the arena floor, if you want to say. Yeah. Timing it takes a bit to master it. I'm now riding at the level when RC and I are playing, or when I'm working with some of these younger horses that don't quite understand it. The more that I can have my focus and I can feel their footfall underneath me, and the more that I can time my cues as that foot's leaving the ground, I can place that foot in the direction that I want it to go. Now that's pretty cool when you actually can pick that foot up before it leaves the ground and then place it where you want, all by your sits bones and your, you know, focus and your timing and your feel. That's pretty cool. But, you know, it depends on where you are in your level. But if you're a beginner rider, I would have loved somebody to be introducing this to me at the beginning, because it gives you an understanding of some of the major components into creating that harmonious relationship. And it helps you to go, okay, what am I focusing on? You know, we can make horsemanship and riding very, very difficult. I mean, we can make it so freaking complex, right, Kristen? I mean, just look at the books out there and the videos. But there's something that Tom Durrance and Ray Hunt had said years ago, and I am just taking it into a deeper and deeper meaning the more that I teach and the more that I ride. And it's this simple fact. Horses do 6 things. They go forwards, they go backwards, they go left, they go right, they go up, they go down, meaning they're transitions. Now, what makes a beginner rider and a beginner horse to those Olympian, those dressage, Grand Prix riders, all those high level riders? What makes the difference? They've mastered focus, feel, timing, and balance of moving the horse in those 6 directions.
Yep. And I would say that timing and balance are really, really intertwined. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that, especially in the discipline that I do, is that our greatest moment in which we can manipulate the horse and rebalance them is when the horse is in the air. So the moment of suspension, right? Because when they're connected into the ground, their force is going down into the ground, and they have way more force than we have, right? Than we could ever, exert. So the more the balance comes up, the more the horse comes off the ground. That's our time to do what we call a half halt, where we come in with our body, and half halt in German means rebalance. And you actually see the horse get more extension in the front, because we're taking the horse from being shaped like this in training level as they go through the levels. Well, actually, as they go through every ride we start out kind of like this, and then we go like this. This being the hind end, this being the front end. Hind end comes under, front end comes up. So how that happens is the trot and the canter have this arc to it. The walk doesn't so much, which is why the walk is the hardest gait to manipulate. It is. It's really easy to get irregular rhythm in the walk. You can fix it a little bit, but a lot of times the horse is born with the walk. But the trot and the canter, we can really come in and improve it. We can help them with their balance. We can help shape them because of the moments where they're in the air. So what happens is the horse comes up in the trot, they get to this point, and then us as a rider, we can mold them. We say, this is how we want you to be shaped. We want your back to come up into us. We don't want you to get so far out in front of your center of gravity, right, that we half halt you, bring you back. So that's really good for horses too that have had front end injuries, right? Horses with front end injuries, you really want to help them on top of dressage horses, get them on the hind end, right? Not make it to where they're 70% on the front end and 30% on the hind end like they'd love to be, just waddling around. So, strengthening that hind end, getting that back to engage, and that's a really hard thing to learn. Riders are perfecting their timing with their half halt for the rest of their life. Absolutely. It never ends, so it's just always a process. Because I have people come in and say, well, how am I going to know, right? When am I going to stop working on this? I'm like, never. You're just going to get better, right? So one of the things that happens too, as your timing gets better, your aids get to get smaller, right? Because your horse falls out of balance less. It's a smaller and smaller and smaller degree of change. So in the beginning, you know, you see somebody ride and they're doing all this stuff, right? Well, that's because their timing isn't right, because their feel isn't there. So their timing's late, right? And then the horse is out of balance, right? So there's that cycle. So there was a famous dressage rider years ago. I'm not going to name her name because there's so much controversy in the dressage world about how some people ride or whatever. And to me, that's neither here nor there with this comment. So she just had, at the time, which was one of the highest scoring rides ever, and she came out and she was getting interviewed, and they said, so what does it feel like to have a perfect ride? And she kind of smiled and she said, there were hundreds of mistakes, you just didn't see them. And what that means is her timing and her feel were so good that she could catch the mistakes and correct them with small enough aids, because she caught them so quickly that it wasn't easily detectable. So one of the things I don't want people to, I come into deal with a lot, is people who watch top riders, they think they never make mistakes. And then they beat themselves up, you know, because they say, well, they never make mistakes. And I'm like, really? Because they're making them all the time, right? Just like the horses. But it's that balancing act, catching it quick, right? So it's smaller aids. So what I always tell people, you know, when you're starting, you go out and start learning to turn like this, right? Doing all this stuff, you know, because you're, you know, out of balance, you're just figuring it out. Thank God I lived, I survived the ride, right? You know, and then as you get better, your steering, just as an example, becomes this, right? Or even this, and it's just in your seat. And every once in a while, a little bit of something, right? But there's still mistakes, they're just smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no such thing as a perfect ride, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it's catching that timing, that feeling, and that balance, right? So that it looks like it is. You know, and that's the beauty in it. That's the dancing part, right?
Right.
You know, just like we don't see it, you know, if you watch, I also like the analogy of figure skaters, right? If you really know what a good pair looks like, right, you'll see the bottom figure skater, you know, sometimes adjusting for the one on the top that he's holding, or vice versa, right? And the horse does the same, right? So, yeah. Right.
I want to come back to that comment of there's no perfect ride. That's kind of a mindset, right?
Right?
Because every time you get on the back of your horse, it could be perfect because you're there and you're together.
Yeah, well, no.
Yeah,
That's true.
and I'm not correcting you, Kristen. I'm just, I love to think about how we speak,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we all go, oh yeah, well, perfect to us is like flawless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, holy moly, the tension and the stress to aspire to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You lose the fun.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if you could just go, every time I get on my horse's back and we both survive,
Mm-hmm.
uninjured, you know, we might be a little frustrated with each other. We might got a little spooked from time to time, but isn't just a day with your horse perfect? Unless we have the agenda of, I have to be like them, you know, and I see it in my clients and I see it in myself too, you know. I have this idea that, you know, today we're going to achieve this, or today I'm going to do my best to not have that happen. And my focus is in the wrong place, you know?
So often, and I'm sure you hear this too, Cindy, I'll hear, well, I don't ride them as well as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And And I just go, but it's not that, right? And they go, well, you don't make any mistakes, is what brings it up. I'm like, "Ooh, plenty. I make plenty of mistakes. He makes plenty of mistakes." So I know for me, I've been trying to bring out when I ride somebody's horse, the mistakes I've made, right? And they say, oh gosh, darn it, that horse didn't pick up that lead. That was all me, right? And the client's like, what? My timing was off. Oh, Fred, I should have asked a half a second later, right? My feelings just not there today, right? I for whatever reason, I'm just off today.
Kristen and I both mic up. So we're mic'd up and our students are mic'd up. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, fine.
But when she's saying she points out her mistakes, I have clients where their horses, they've been doing the dance for so long, it's ingrained and it's bad habits, and the horse knows how to push the buttons. And so the client loses their focus and then they lose everything else, And so when they ask me to ride their horse, we're mic'd up. So I can say, okay, here's where he's doing that. This is what I'm doing. I can say, oh, I missed that. That's okay. I'm going to come around and try and get it the next time. Or, oops, I was too late. Oops, I was too soon. So we're pointing out to them while we're riding where we're making those mistakes, because we all make them. It's just, how much have you worked with focus, feel, timing, and balance? Like Kristen said, we're not out here anymore. And if we were, you probably
were on the green horse.
Well, on the green horse, yes, we are. But
I just wanted to point that out, because I don't want them to think that they want somebody who's not a good they might be a really good trainer, but on a green horse. So.
Yes, and I'm glad that you say that, because I shared a video on my Facebook page of a client of mine whose horse, it's her first horse. He was young. They've created some bad habits. They get along they do amazing riding considering the dynamics, right? But I got on him and I was trying to correct him with, littler corrections and, my legs and my sits bones and my hands. And he was just blasting through me. And so I literally said, you want to act like a baby, I'm going to treat you like a baby. And I went back to big, exaggerated, bam, bam, really shaping him up. And pretty soon he was like, holy moly, I'm not a baby anymore. Yeah. And he came up underneath me. But it leads into our balance, right, Kristen? Balance is each one of these words has so many different meanings in riding a horse and working with a horse, because it's always what you're doing on the ground is preparing you to do in the saddle. Balance is, you got to be balanced in your seat to stay in the saddle. No doubt there. And that's something we're always working to perfect. I watch Kristen and some of these really, really high level dressage riders, and it's like, holy moly, you're doing nothing. And your horse is doing all this stuff. So I know all that's coming from your sits bones and your balance of your movement, your timing and your focus and your feel and all of that. But balance isn't just being balanced and staying in the seat so that when your horse zigs, you zig instead of zagging. It's also about how much focus, how much feel, how much timing, and balancing all of that out so that it's a nice, beautiful, rhythmic dance. So balance, is a lot of different things. And with a lot of people I'm teaching, I'm not only teaching them to have a more balanced seat so that they don't get unseated. Teaching them, how much balancing the weight in their feet versus their hands, and, the timing and all of that stuff. But the balancing of your emotions, the balancing of your thoughts. When you think of balance, It's those, love those old-fashioned scales, right? Where you want them to be like this. Sometimes they go like this, but we're striving for this. So it's the balance of you with your focus, feel, timing, and balance. It's the balance of the horse, but then it's the balance of the two that makes this synergistic partnership.
Yeah, and making sure your intensity doesn't get too high, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like she was saying, it's the balance of the focus too, right? Because you can be too focused and way too intense, and some horses will just crawl out of their skin with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we have some horses here that they're already like that, right? They're already so focused, so driven that you have to focus, but you have to be playful in it. So you have to just really be mindful of the horse that you're sitting on, right? And that's one of the things that can be hard with being professional, right? Because we constantly have to change how we approach a horse depending on the horse, right? We have to go in and say, okay, well, what does my horse teach me, right? Or what do I need? How do I need to approach this horse? How do I need to focus? How do I need to, I mean, I have, for example, my two here, they couldn't be any more opposite. Wincento is very military. He likes all the focus. He's like, oh, just, let's drive harder. Let's do this. Let's do that, whereas my other horse, he can't handle that. He can't handle that. We cannot, I have to have 100% a lightheartedness about me all the time. It's too personal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, something you're going to have to play with your horse, because remember that you can be focused and driven without being intense.
Yep.
And I hope that makes sense to you,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, there's, you don't have to have intensity, extreme intensity. So that's just something to balance, because I know a lot of us horse people are really type A. So,
and you can see some of the most charismatic, lighthearted, playful people facilitating something,
mm-hmm.
and their focus is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And and with Kristen talking about, she's got two that are so opposite ends, and she has to rise to meet that horse that she's working with. The other thing to think about in that area is you don't expect your horse to be the same horse every day, because we're not the same. I mean, some days I wake up, I feel like I'm on top of the world. I have so much joy in my heart. I have the feeling of a child, looking through the world through the eyes of a child. I'm so excited about everything. And other days I wake up and it's like, holy moly,
yeah.
I don't feel motivated. I don't feel confident. So we don't really appreciate, you guys, that our horses have moods as well. Especially those that we're striving for a goal. We've got, in 6 months, I want to do this, or in 3 months, I'm going to compete there. And then we get tunnel focus, tunnel vision, but we don't stop to think about how is that affecting our horse. And our horse we may have had a phenomenal ride the day before, and the focus, everything was right on, right? And your horse was more athletic than he's ever been. Well, think about that day that you were out on the ski slope, or you were water skiing, or you were biking, and you had an amazing, all I see is your hand, and you had an amazing day, but then you wake up the next morning and you are like so sore because you use those muscles way more than you had ever used them before. Well, horses get sore too, but we get so excited we're just going to get right, pull them out and get on them and expect them to be the same. So again, just meet the horse that's there that day And, you know, there's a saying of observe, remember, and compare. Observe how he greets you, observe how he moves, remember how he did the last time, and then compare the two, you know, and then use your focus, feel, timing, and balance to have the best, perfect day.
It's kind of funny you brought that up, because I actually just had so I have a lady, well, we have lots of people that come in and ride our lesson horses, right? And we had a woman today who's, she's probably on her 7th ride. And for one, she doesn't realize how really good she is, considering that she hasn't ridden that much. She's doing great. And she said, so what is your roadmap with people who are just starting? And I kind of looked at her and I said, well, you know, I said, we always have a plan, but it always gets changed, right? Because you have to reassess the horse, the situation, and the environment and the rider every day, right? You know, I could come out, you know, I had a plan, for example, a couple weeks ago to work on her seat with her, right? And instead, her horse decided one of his, I should call it, you know, he's always trying to assert his dominance over another horse in the arena. And he was speeding up as the other horse was coming by towards him. So instead, the lesson, I said, no, we've got to stop this, right? Because this behavior can become dangerous, right? So we regrouped and decided we were going to do a lesson on horse psychology, right? But that's where you have to be able to reevaluate and not be fixed to your plan, right? That horse had never done that before, ever. I mean, both of them have been here for 6 or 7 years. They've never done anything like that. And all of a sudden, it was Chip, one of our lesson horses. He was like, I'm going to go faster as Dexter's coming by. And I'm like, wait a moment. Who knows what he dreamt of that night to make him decide that today was the day that he was going to start that, right? Sorry.
Or he decided today is the day I'm going to be alpha of the arena.
Yeah, right?
And I'm going to show everybody because I feel fast.
Yeah, and I'm 25 years old and I'm going to figure that out today. I'm like, okay, sure. Not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? But so that's that biorhythm. Who knows where that came from? We didn't see any signs of it the day before, but you have to be willing to change and alter. And we fixed it in that lesson and didn't try it again since. So, you know, and it became a different learning opportunity for her.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Kristen is so right. You know, we need to have a plan and we need to be focused on our plan, but we also need to be reading the horse and observing the horse and observing the environment. You know, you may think that you're going to go and you're going to work on this. Well, the wind is blowing, or one of the other horses is in heat and she's hollering, or somebody's been hurt and just the energy at the barn is not, you know, it's heavy. And everybody, we're all energy beings, whether we understand that, believe it or not, we are, and we feed off of each other. That's why, you know, you go into the mall at Christmas time and you know, you're like, oh, I'm going shopping. And in 15 minutes, you are like ready to rip somebody's head off.
Yeah.
It's because everybody's so stressed out and you just stepped into that energy pool. So our horses have that same thing. So I hope that this was valuable to you guys. It's been fun. Kristen and I, we have the relation. This is kind of funny. Our relationship is of such that we have so much trust and respect for one another that we just kind of pick out of the blue what topic we're going to talk about. Yeah. And then we flow with it. And so I kind of chuckled because we actually just did in this hour talk what we're asking you guys to do with your horses. We had our focus. We had our feel for each other and the flow of the conversation and the respect and trust for one another. We worked on timing. When does she talk? When do I interject? When does she interject? And we balanced it out. So the amazing thing about horses, and when you decide to commit to a relationship with the horse, is they are teaching you about life. Everything that I am learning with horses applies to every area in my life. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So it's
Totally.
very cool. So we didn't talk at the beginning, you guys. Synergistic horsemanship is, our goal is to educate and to share what we know, to bring on other people and share what they know. We're here for questions. We would love if any of you guys have a topic you want to know about, just send us a message, post it on our page. We're here every Thursday night at 6:15. We have a YouTube channel called Synergistic Horsemanship. There's lots of videos on there. This video will be on there, so get on there and watch that. Please subscribe to our channel. It's what keeps us going and growing. And like always, we are very, very appreciative of you guys tuning in and following us, and we appreciate you.
Yep.
And so, yeah, for now, we're going to call it a night. Unless you have something else, Kristen, I didn't even ask you.
No, I think we're good.
All right, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back next Thursday night at 6:15. We will have an amazing topic, I'm sure. And if you have a topic, please let us know. We'd be happy to talk about it. But give us a couple days in advance, okay? So if we need to research, we can research it. Until next Thursday, be kind, stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you later.
See you later, guys.